Huh. This is something I didn't expect from Liko at all.
Pokemon Ranger! I choose you!
What's up, my dear boys and girls, it's Ranger Boy here, and welcome to a double review of Pokemon Horizons. Like always, real life got in the way, but to be honest, I'm actually really glad that I'm now reviewing both episodes in one video, because both are very much connected to the future of our main character Liko. So if you want to know more, then grab some popcorn, grab some cookies, and let's do this! Since I don't want to make this video too long, let's get through last week's episode as quick as possible. aka a continuation from before, where Kabu just pops up out of nowhere, but sadly, he left the scenery as quick as he entered it. With him potentially providing more clues in regards of Black Rayquaza, our heroes are chasing him down, arriving at his gym, and then are quickly welcomed by his disciple. They soon meet Kabu, ask him about Black Rayquaza while also explaining why exactly they're chasing after such a dangerous Pokemon, and impressed by their passion, the Galar gym leader is testing their skills in form of a gym challenge. Roy has to lighten up Litwig's flames, while Liko has to extinguish them, and at first, Liko seems to have the upper hand since she developed new forms of her leafage attack, but then Roy does what he does best, singing. And as soon as he sings, Roy is on the verge of victory. But then Liko sees a chance to gain several points all at once, and therefore winning the challenge. But seeing how determined Roy and Fuecoco are, she emphasizes with them and throws the towel in their favor, which Kabu immediately recognizes. Now it's time for both to take on the gym leader himself, and even though this was supposed to be a double battle alongside his apprentice, Kabu is so strong that he easily handles both of them all by himself. While Liko feels helpless against the gym leader, Roy sings once again, pumping up his Pokemon, and soon Fuecoco's Ember develops into a flamethrower. That's the classic Pokemon formula. But his main character powers won't help Roy, and soon he gets blasted by Kabu's ace. Now it's time for Kabu to take the backseat and let his disciple battle against Liko, which is also her test of becoming Kabu's official gym trainer. And even though she tries very hard, Liko quickly dominates her thanks to her variations of leafage, which she developed earlier. But seeing how desperate the disciple wants to be Kabu's gym trainer, Liko once again emphasizes with her opponent, and to the dismay of Sprigatito, Liko gives up once again. Naturally, the disciple feels really insulted by Liko just giving this win away, and therefore she flees the scenery. Kabu then points out how Liko did the same thing with Roy before, and that Liko is a very compassionate and emphasizing girl, but that her mindset doesn't really belong on the battlefield, because with her kindness, she's disregarding both the feelings of her opponent and the feelings of her Pokemon as well. Liko quickly apologizes to the apprentice. Kabu then tells them about his encounter with Black Rayquaza and how it flew off towards their Galar mines. The Rising Ball tacklers are on their way, and the episode ends with Liko remembering Kabu's farewell advice, that Pokemon battle isn't the only path a trainer can take, and that Liko should find a trainer path that suits her own beliefs. That's the end. So, impressions. Overall, it was a good introduction of the Galar region and also the gym leader Kabu. The first thing I really like is how Horizons in general displays gym leaders as these really strong trainers that you can't mess around with. First with Brassius and now with Kabu. Both gym leaders didn't struggle at all with their opponents, the latter one even going so far to take on both Liko and Roy all by himself. I have to mention that because it brings some proper sense of power scaling back into the franchise, which was really needed. Is it always properly executed? No. And we already saw in the past that sometimes even Horizons has some power scaling issues, but it's a much needed improvement compared to the past, especially if you consider Journeys, where for example a newbie like Go just easily defeated the likes of Raid Flygon, Zapdos, and Oleana's Milotic. Continuing with the flaws of Journeys, it's really nice to see how much respect the Galar region receives in this anime, with not only the strong display of Kabu, but also how we get some nice side stories of people and Pokemon from that region, like for example with Michelle from the week before, and Alcremie during the Murdoch episode, Kabu's apprentice, and even later on with Hatenna in this week's adventure. It's so nice, but at the same time, so weird to see Gen 8 receiving more love and more respect in Horizons compared to the neglect and sheer disrespect that they received during the Journeys days, aka the Gen 8 anime days. Last but not least, Roy once again stands out very positively, with the anime approaching a more classic and traditional way of developing him, the never giving up mentality and the hard work mindset, which in the end led to him not only winning the gym challenge, but also with his Fuecoco now learning Flamethrower. Now let's talk about the one aspect in this episode that I'm a little bit conflicted with, Liko and her potential future. Her story in this episode was that unlike Roy, who sometimes shows no empathy towards other people, Liko shows too much empathy and too much kindness towards her opponent, to the point where she willingly will give up a challenge, step aside, and let other people just run through her. That mindset of too much kindness even led to gym leader Kabu stating that the format of Pokemon battles might not be suitable for her, and that she should find a path she really believes in. On the one hand, it's a very unique approach that we have never seen before, and it could lead to something potentially very interesting. But on the other hand, hearing that the face of the franchise and the successor of Ash Ketchum is not suitable for Pokemon battling? I mean, I know we have Roy for that role, but that still is something I really have to digest if I'm being honest here. But I will still see this approach in a more positive light because Liko is still my favorite character in this anime, and like I said before, it could lead to something very interesting and something we have never seen before. And if there's something I really like about Horizons is that it's always providing us with something new and something very enticing. So that's the end of last week's episode, so therefore let's dive straight into this week's story. We start off with the wild but adorable Hatenna being scared of lightning and soon ending up inside a box within a mountain hut. Back to our crew, we continue with the theme of Liko trying to find her path as a trainer that suits her most, and after a chat with her schoolmate Anne, my god, I really miss this girl, mostly because she's a fellow Oshawott enthusiast, Liko can't help but to feel amazed of how much both Anne and Roy progressed in their own path, while Liko still feels lost. Despite some encouragement from both Reed and Roy, Liko still feels like a cloud of doubt is flying above her head, and then she suddenly gets interrupted by real clouds raining upon her, leading to the three of them finding shelter in a nearby hut. Inside the building, they find a seemingly exhausted Hatenna, aka a Pokemon that is very sensitive if being exposed towards too many emotions, and soon enough, Liko realizes that something is wrong, and as a result of that, she storms out of the hut with the Pokemon in her arms and towards the reliable nurse Molly. At Molly's, none of them could find any visible damage on the Pokemon, which led to Molly rightfully concluding that it must be suffering some sort of emotional damage and that it should be carefully handled. Our heroine feels the need to help her newfound friend and therefore is now looking after her. The first thing Liko does is to get advice from her idol and best friend Dot, who basically describes Hatenna's problem being very similar to her problem as a streamer, being exposed to both very positive but also very negative comments / emotions all at once, and that Dot always finds a healthy balance between both of them. Honestly, good advice. But during the explanation, the emotional Pokemon disappears, so the search begins while Hatenna is constantly exposed to both positive but also negative emotions within a brand new but unknown environment. Bearing no fruits of success, the group splits up, and while doing so, Liko remembers the very first time she arrived on board of the airship, a rainy day as well, and how especially after the incident with the explorers, she felt very lonely. Relating to Hatenna's situation, she suddenly hears a cry on top of the airship's tower, and after arriving there, Liko gives her a speech of how scary it must be to be exposed to so many new things and feelings within an unknown environment, and how Liko can relate to Hatenna since she felt the exact same way the first time she arrived here. The Pokemon now seems to be more open towards Liko, and the two get a little bit closer, so much so that she makes herself comfortable inside Liko's hoodie, Rowlet style. Liko writes down her experience, and after the next day arrives, is about to release Hatenna back into the wilderness, but luckily for us, Sprigatito intervenes and probably suggests for her to join the gang, which she does, and with that, Liko finally catches her very first Pokemon. Both Roy and Freed praise Liko for her talent of both understanding the feelings of Pokemon and bonding with them very quickly, and soon Liko realizes that this right here is the kind of path she wants her trainer career to be, someone who understands the feelings of Pokemon. The episode ends with Amifio and his crew also finally making their return after a long period of absence, with them making their next move towards our heroes. Once again, that's it, and just like before, impressions. So while last week's episode was all about Liko being established as somebody who is quote-unquote not suited for battle, in this week's episode we see some further steps of Liko not only towards her own path, but also more importantly, her steps away of how typical trainers are perceived. With the way Liko both approached and in the end caught Hatenna by trying to understand the Pokemon from an emotional point of view while also trying to relate to her situation, it also simultaneously made clear what kind of career / trainer Liko aspires to be. Instead of focusing on the usual methods like training, getting stronger, or battling trainers, she instead seems to concentrate more on both analyzing and approaching Pokemon from a more emotional and mental point of view, while also being able to bond with them very quickly. This, in my opinion, could lead to several interesting paths, like for example, becoming a Pokemon professor like Freed, or maybe a doctor like Brock, or maybe a Pokemon connoisseur like Silent, or maybe even a brand new career that we haven't heard of before. The risk is still that, just like mentioned in my last review, this diversion from the classic Pokemon format feels a little bit weird since she is the face of the franchise and the success of Ash. And if you think about Ash, you think of the traditional way of battling and getting stronger. Fortunately, we have Roy who fills that gap, but Liko is still the more prominent member of the two, and I do hope that her path towards her career will be something that many fans will enjoy. She's basically what the Pokegirls of the past were, somebody who didn't enjoy battling and gym battles that much and instead aim for a career totally different from that, with the only difference being that the Pokegirl now is the face of the franchise. I have to emphasize once again that personally I find this direction really interesting, but at the same time I have to admit that it's a rather ballsy move that they are doing with Liko right now. So I really do hope that the risk they are taking with Liko will pay off and that she will have an interesting and engaging career, and her first capture, Hatenna, is the very first step towards that career. Anyway guys, I really hope you enjoyed this review. What is your opinion? Tell me, and just like always, see you guys in the comments down below. Bye guys!